Welcome to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Hey, that's me. Hi, and welcome to Positive Talk. Our show features the best positive stories and people from around the globe as we endeavor to answer the universal question of why am I here and what is my purpose? Understanding that can change everything, and knowing your greatness is fundamental to living your best life. So join us right now as together we work to create the adventure of our lifetime. And welcome to the show, everybody. You know, what if I were to tell you at one point in your life that eventually you're going to have 20 books under your belt and you're going to have 15 novels and all kinds of different genres and things and stuff. Would you believe me if I told you that was going to be your future? I don't know.
Likely not. And I suppose when I started writing, I thought maybe I could publish a book one day.
That's right. And
I did.
Yes, this is Chuck Rosenthal. He has written, he's got 15 novels. He's got a new novel coming out that we want to talk about. We also want to talk him and his process and his life story and how it all came to be.
So this novel is now out.
Oh, good.
Yes, and it's getting some good reviews and around and some attention from other podcasts, and people like the book because it's really good. It's one of my best works. I really discovered rediscovered storytelling in a new way, and really had a good time and a hard time writing it, and that's some of the best things that can do.
Exactly. Now the name of the book is Awake Forever in a Sweet Unrest. And what is it about? And well, the short synopsis is it's a ghost story about a young female high school dropout who encounters adventures with ghosts of the romantic poets. That's interesting. How did you come up with that?
I don't know exactly. I guess in 2011 I flew to London and taught at Imperial College, and I was coming off radiation, and you know what radiation is usually for, and I was feeling very unsettled, and I was waking up in the middle of the night, and going to a giant bay window in my flat and watching the double-decker buses going by and drinking a glass of port to calm down and reading William Blake. Now, I had never read William Blake, who is just a fantastic illustrator and a wild mind and inspired many of these romantic poets. So when I returned to Los Angeles, I began reading the romantic poets, and my life partner, who is a poet and a scholar, said, "Oh, you want to read the Romantics, do you?" And she went up to her office and came down and gave me a pile of books, all of Keats and Shelley and Byron, right? John Keats, Percy Bysshe Shelley, and Lord Byron, and I reread Mary Shelley, who's a very fascinating person, and wrote that amazing novel Frankenstein when she was 19 years old.
Oh wow!
Yeah. And people claimed that she was inspired by Byron and Shelley because they were all reading German Gothic stories translated into the French because they spoke and read French and Greek and Latin and Italian, but not German. And Shelley and Byron suggested, well, why don't we all just write a horror story? And then they left and went fishing and hunting and, and riding horses and didn't do it. So she did, along with another young man. These people were all in their early 20s, and Mary Shelley was 19. William Polidori, who wrote the first vampire novel called The Vampire, which is a very short book and not as good as writer as Mary Shelley. So that inspired me too, because I've always loved the novel Frankenstein, and I'm reading these guys, and I start reading decide to read their biographies, and I think, well, how can I write about these guys? This is 200 years ago. They're fascinating people. They did hunt and fish and sail and take opium and drink liquor, and
Yeah.
They were so they were inspired. I mean, and it drove Coleridge, in fact, who is kind of a partial character in this book. It drove him to his death. He and it can do that.
Yeah. Well, and people remember didn't live 200 years ago. People did not live as long as they do today.
Never did. I'm sorry.
People 200 years ago, their lifespans were a lot shorter than they are today.
Yes,
and partially is because of the drink and the opiates and the other things that they were into, but also disease and that kind of stuff too.
And they were shorter people too. Keats was just barely over 5 feet, although he boxed. He loved boxing.
Oh wow.
And he bet on boxing. But Byron is close to normal size and very muscular and handsome. They're all really good looking romantic guys too. But I didn't know how was I going to write about them. And then I don't know where the idea came from. They discovered a library. So at a place where I know a lot of poets, and a lot of poets read at Beyond Baroque in Venice Beach in Los Angeles. And I said, well, I don't know where it came from. I'll discover it. We need to have ghosts in the library, but there's got to be somebody that's got to meet the ghosts. The ghosts have to happen to someone. And that's when I came up with a Beatrice, because a ghost story and all these kind of men, it made sense, right, that it would be a woman. And at first I had her too old. She was like 27. And I said, she can't be well educated. She's got to encounter these people and discover them. And in some ways, her personality, she goes in the basement and as an intern at Beyond Baroque, she volunteers to go unpaid in a basement where they've discovered all these books, and somebody's got to record them. The problem is nothing works in the basement, right? No electricity, no phones, no flashlights. It's dark. So she goes down there with a lantern and a pad of paper, and a woman appears to her who introduces herself as Mary Wollstonecraft Godwin Shelley. Wollstonecraft is her mother, famous feminist in the turn of the 18th and 19th century, and her father was one of the most leading philosophers of the era. And Mary Shelley, of course, has been dead for almost 200 years. So but she entices Beatrice, my main character, to discover them, and takes her down the Keats row in the library, in the basement library, and there at the end of that row is Keats, and that begins her visitations with these poets who are very fascinating people in terms of that, in terms of building a character, or there they were. They lived fascinating lives, and I knew them. I read biographies of each of them, including Coleridge and Mary Shelley, and read their works. And I discovered that title. I discovered that title as the third to last line in the collected works of Keats, in a poem called Bright Star, Awake Forever. I wrote Awake Forever down and started writing the book.
Isn't that interesting? So these entities, which were ghosts that had died 200 years before, what was her response when this first visitation happened? Was she shocked? Was she amazed? Was she engaged?
She was scared.
That's another word.
Yeah. and she asks, well, she almost doesn't go in. The rest of the library, she backs off, and Mary Shelley says, okay, if you back off, you're gonna miss the stories of your life. And so she goes in and spends time with her and says, okay, can I leave now? And Mary Shelley says, okay, you can leave. She says, can I come back? She says, well, if you come back by yourself, you can come back. So she leaves and talks to her boss about this, and goes home and thinks about it, and comes back and goes and says, well, I'm 19. What have I done with my life? I've obviously been back. So she said, book of discovery. I've been backing away from my life all this time. I'm going to do this. And so So she's described almost as if, right, say a foal, right, in a pasture, discovering the gate open and looking out of the pasture into the world, and being frightened and enticed. But she does it, and then as it happens, she just collects herself. She finds herself walking in the mountains with Keats, and what are you going to do? You're walking in the mountains with John Keats, and so, and he accepts her, and then takes her on a couple of adventures. So she visits each. I'm sorry.
I'm sorry, but she is still in the body, so she's still alive and well at 19, and she meets these entities, and they're able to take her out into the adventures of a lifetime.
Yes, 200 years ago, and they're in their bodies too. Keats even tells her, maybe you're the ghost.
She's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
So, yeah. So I don't worry about it. I don't worry about the time thing, and I don't worry about the trying to figure out. But I just do it. There they are. She's there with them, and I take real adventures from their lives. I place her in those contexts that they've had. She was walking across France with Percy Bysshe and Mary Godwin at that time, and her stepsister. They're 16. They walk across France. She goes sailing with Shelley, and they're all, Shelley sleeps with everybody, but she doesn't sleep with Shelley, and she in her mind, she feels as if when Keats is reciting his poems to her that he's making love to her. But Byron's another story. Byron is a very seductive being.
So let's get back and by the way, the name of that book is Awake Forever in a Sweet Unrest. It's a novel.
Should I hold it up? I know my publicist would insist I do it there.
Yeah, your publicist knows best. And Chuck Rosenthal is the author, and he's written 15 novels and several more books past that. How'd you get started, Chuck? Were you always a imaginary guy? I mean, thinking in terms of what to write and how to do it, or is this a later in life thing?
Well, I wrote my first short story in the 3rd grade, so I guess I had a tendency to write and to want to write. But when you're that young, it's hard to be persistent. But in high school, I started writing novellas. I wrote 3 or 4, and I got behind the back of the student in front of me and put the notebook, and just I was, high school isn't that hard. You can absorb things in high school, but and so I guess I was always writing, but I went on different paths. I studied history, and then I studied literature and philosophy in college, and went on to be a philosopher, and went to philosophy graduate school. But eventually, it became very confining about what you could do as a philosopher, and mostly it was talking about other philosophers. And my counselor then, a very very famous Peter Hare, his name was, a very famous William James scholar, said, maybe you should try something else. I said, oh, well, but I wrote a couple of things in college, and so I did try something else. I started keeping a journal, and writing poems, and reading like a madman, because I hadn't been reading. So I got a great big anthology of American literature, 2 volumes of it, and I began reading the poems. And when I got to a novelist, say James Fenimore Cooper, I read all his books. And that's how I approached it. So I read all Hemingway, a lot of people, and started writing. And I wrote 3 novels that way. I don't know where they are now. I know, but I just decided I would just keep writing, and then I did keep writing. So.
And some of your works are very interesting and on a wide range of subjects.
Yeah.
And some of them are paranormal, I believe, and
Yes.
some, at least from the looking at them, and some of them are, I believe there's one about extraterrestrials or something along those lines, and I could be wrong. But by the way, we're talking with Chuck Rosenthal. If you go to his website, which is chuckrosenthal.com. You
Correct.
think you could have come up with a catchier name? No, I'm kidding. That's a great website.
Yeah, I know. I had a couple very famous mentors that said, "You got the wrong name." I said, "Well, I don't know what we're gonna do."
Well,
So,
actually, I think Chuck Rosenthal is a great author name.
oh, terrific!
Personally.
That's good.
Yes. So we need to take a quick break. It's only 30 seconds. So we will be right back. Stay right where you are, everybody. Again, we're talking with novelist and author Chuck Rosenthal. We'll be right back.
They have your eyes. They have your ears. They have your smile. Now all they need is a little more of your time. Make a difference in your child's life, because anyone can be a father. It takes time to be a dad.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. We're talking with the author Chuck Rosenthal. He's got 15 novels out, and his latest book is called Awake Forever in a Sweet Unrest. And it really goes through 200 years and about authors and about these folks, one of which wrote Frankenstein. I heard that correctly, correct?
Yes.
What was it like? Did you read Frankenstein? I've seen the movie and I've seen Young Frankenstein, and
Which is a great funny movie.
Yeah, it was a funny movie. But I
Terry
did.
Gard just died, by the way, who was in that movie. She died yesterday.
Yes, I know, and it is so sad that the older I get, Chuck, and you look way younger than me, but the older I get, and some of these famous names that, like, Terry Gard just recently passed, and she was in my era of stuff. So that's kind of hard that so many people are passing that are contemporaries of ours, basically. But you're still here, and we're glad to have you.
I'm still
And
now I came close a few times. I had various accidents and disease, but I've survived. And
that's isn't that the bottom line? You're still here, man.
Yeah, and I'm glad to be here. And it's a good thing, and try to do positive things. And that's another thing about this book. And the main character, Beatrice, is it's a coming of age book. The further she goes into these lives and understanding them and realizing that she can't change history, she can't save them, she matures and discovers herself and grows into womanhood. So that's important. And she's a very, there's so many terrifying things right now in the world. And this book was written pretty much during the pandemic. I wanted to step away from this and say positive and interesting things and complex things about being a human being and discovering yourself as a human being and doing it through these rather amazing individuals. Was a challenge, but grew to be more and more fun. She also runs into I don't know, homeless is the wrong word now, but a man that lives on Venice Beach in a tent who believes he's Coleridge. And so there she is in her contemporary society dealing with someone. And he takes her he says inside his tent is Xanadu. And he takes her there.
Did they find Xanadu? No, I did. I don't want to betray some of the stuff that's in the book, because it's a worthy read, and I hope everybody gets it. How long has it been out now?
It came out technically on September 5. We relaunched it on October 11th at Beyond Baroque, appropriately. And it's so not long, and but I don't know. I'm not a sales hound. I'm not going around trying to find out how many books I've sold, but it's selling. I know that it's selling, and it's getting good reviews, and those reviews are appearing now, starting to be circulated. And so but it's, it's exciting, but it's like Beatrice, it's a little frightening too. This is a it's a new world for me to engage on this level with the book. I usually just write a book, put it aside, write another book.
Do you find that because you're an author at heart and you've been doing this since you were in the third grade, but the marketing side and all of that, do you find that that's a little bit less fun than the act of writing the book and putting it together?
That's actually, yes, absolutely. And I know a lot of artists and writers, and some of them are unsuccessful, but they continue, and they do it because they love the work, and that's they love to do it, and that's the essential thing. You love to do it, and a novel is just a wonderful thing. I know many poets, but you wake up every day and you re-enter that world, and you can just pick up where you left off, and then when you set it aside, you can sit back and think or converse and make up scenes in your mind. Yep. About what these characters are doing to each other and saying with each other, and that's of course developing character. You're doing that in your mind. So much of that doesn't get to the page, but I'm living in that world, and that's fun. That's really fun. It's particularly when it starts coming together, as this book did and does. Right?
Is it kind of like watching a movie that you're kind of in?
Boy, a little bit, except Beatrice's father tells her that's to mistake reality for reality is like believing a movie is reality. So you shouldn't be committed to your life in that way.
But I'll tell you, it's like I'm looking at the synopsis of the book and your synopsis, and you are an acclaimed. How does it feel when somebody says Chuck Rosenthal, the acclaimed author? How does that sit with you? Does that resonate with you?
Not so much. I don't feel so acclaimed, but it's a nice. but it's a nice to have that said, because I've worked very hard and written some very good books, and a lot of us try to do that. So it's nice to get the recognition, and the word is a nice word. So I accept the description and hope for more. But you're right. The marketing stuff is not the fun stuff. The fun stuff is writing it. But when one person can come up to you and say, I loved your book, and that means the world to me.
Yep.
That's and that's happened a lot with this book. So that's a good thing. And people I know, and people who I respect, and people who are good writers themselves, to them to acknowledge, that makes me feel good. But I'm generally not an optimist, so I'm not a feel good guy.
Well, you should feel good about this work and your other works, because you're right. Because sitting in your, I don't know where you write, at your desk or in your kitchen, or I've talked to a lot of authors, and some of them do it right, and while they're making dinner, as an example, if they're so busy they haven't got time, but an idea comes to them, and so they write it down while they're making the spaghetti or whatever it is. But when you are, it's a solitary activity when you are sitting down writing a novel, and in your head with the information that is coming forth and the things that are happening, and you don't really know. It's like the work that I do. I don't really know. I'm sitting here in my office, in my studio, and I don't know if anybody's listening. I don't know if anybody's going to really take this interview to heart or whatever. And but I do it anyway, because it fills me up. And when somebody then says, "Boy, that interview you did with Mr. Rosenthal. Boy, that really touched me. That's what makes it all worthwhile, isn't it?
Well, that's certainly one of the major things that makes it worthwhile. It's also producing doing what you love and producing that level of trying to achieve that level of perfection in what you do. And when you touch that, sometimes, I mean, that's a wonderful thing. And what you're talking about made me think of one of my brothers is a painter, and he went to painting school and he studied painting, and his philosophy was, and he has a studio in New York. He studied the body, the Renaissance, the muscles, the bones. Then he studied the history of color and how color affects psychology. He said, and then one day he said, "You just sit down," and he let it come out my hands. I don't paint with my head; I paint with my hands. And this book was written in a journal in pencil, longhand. And
oh my,
yeah, I sat in a chair and put it that on my knee and just sat and thought and wrote. And
where did the thoughts come from? Do you have any idea?
I'm kind of like my brother. I think they come out in your hands. But if you read and write a lot, I think they come from that. They come from that source of your reading and your conscientiousness. And I read often 6 or 7 books at once. I have a book anywhere I possibly might sit down, and I pick up that book. So I have a short attention span, but I have a good memory. So I can pick up a plot or a story, or remember where a character was, and then influence is great. I know there are a lot of people, particularly a lot of young creatives, who don't want to be influenced. Man, open it up, be influenced, let it all come into, and then wait for it to come out. But it's a complex process trying to figure out like what to do next. Hemingway would say, never finish a scene or a chapter and walk away. Always stop in the middle or start another scene and then walk away, so that you're coming back and absolutely immediately re-entering. And that's a good policy. But I think
so you're fully engaged with what you're doing. Reading 6 or 7 books at the same time, that's beyond my imagination, because I would forget who was in what, doing what to whom, all that kind of stuff, depending on which book you happen to be reading. So that's pretty good talent right there. One of the things I like to talk to authors about is I believe that there's an intuitive sense to what it is that an author does. That it's not a matter of in your head, it's in your heart, it's in your imagination, and sometimes it just flows. Do you agree with that?
Yes. And sometimes it doesn't, but you have to relax when it doesn't flow and just do something. It's even though I would like to change the world and would like to write the most gorgeous sentences, sometimes I have to just tell myself, I'm just practicing here. I'm just working on getting better. And sometimes I do work on getting better. You don't have to keep it. It's just because you wrote it down. It doesn't have to be there forever. You can change it, move it around. Which, as happy as I was when I thought I'd finished this book with what it was, I said, "Yep, I did it." I still made a lot of changes with this, and I had some very good advice. And I usually don't take advice very well when it comes to writing. But I had some very good advice from Gail Ronsky about, wait a minute, don't do that here, do that there. And that was right. So
that is fun to have somebody that you trust implicitly who can help you with the timing of things and the placement and the editing and all that kind of stuff, because that's really important.
Yes. Yeah. And that's, I'm grateful, but it's just fun to live in that world, and now I can re-enter this book, and this is a book which you can not only sit down and read in, say, an afternoon if you want, but many people have told me they're rereading it, and that's really uncommon. And I have a very good friend who was a pretty famous journalist, and he said he was going to read this book once a year for the rest of his life, and and give it to everybody he knew. I said, wow, that's good news. That's a wonderful
That's,
thing to say.
that's pretty high praise right there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That is, and I've been praised before, but not like that. So it helps you believe in yourself when other people believe in you, for sure.
It surely does, and that is so true. By the way, we're talking with acclaimed author Chuck Rosenthal, and to go to his website, Rosenthal.com. We need to take our station break, and when we come back, we're going to talk more about the interesting side of his life, like he's been evacuated from his home in Southern California, like I don't know, 10 or 15 times because of fires and all that kind of stuff. we're gonna touch on that and much more when we come right back. So stay with us, everybody.
You're listening to Brushwood Media Network, the best in syndicated talk, news, and entertainment shows.
As you go about your daily life, look closer. As you gather with family and friends who love and support you, look closer. There are youth right in your community who don't have the home, warmth, and healing you have. So look closer. Every year across America, a staggering 4.2 million youth are homeless or trafficked. And for 50 years, Covenant House has worked relentlessly to keep them safe and protected. Tonight, 2,000 young people will sleep safely in a Covenant House bed. And tomorrow, they will wake up surrounded by love. They get clean clothes, hot meals, medical care, and a safe place to sleep. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. In sites across America to help them fulfill the great promise of their lives. So look closer at Covenant House. To help or get help, go to covenanthouse.org.
And welcome back to Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. And we've got an acclaimed author who's got a new book out. And the name of the book is Awake Forever in a Sweet Unrest. That is a beautiful title. And his name is Chuck Rosenthal. And he also lives in Southern California. And I asked him if he had ever had any problems with fires. And what did you say to me, sir?
I've been evacuated 12 times in the last 33 years. And a couple of times the fire got close, so this surrounded the house. So I had a tremendous respect for firemen and fire people. I know that. And it's, that's frightening. But I wasn't in the house when it got surrounded. I was evacuated. When I came back, I saw that everything was charred all around us. So
wow. And you also said that getting all the animals out and doing all that would be so hard if somebody comes knocking at your front door and says, you got 15 minutes to get out of this place.
Yep. Or they come down the street with loudspeakers and say, you gotta go, you have to go. Some Topangas are pretty tough, they don't go, but that's a big risk. I always got out.
To me, I don't know how you can, no matter how you slice it, getting burned to death is not a good way to go. I don't care who you are.
No, I don't want it to go that way. I don't know how to choose which way I want to go, but
well, eventually you'll get to a point where you won't. Well, number one, eventually you won't have to choose because it's going to choose it for you.
Right.
But that's one of the things about life is that we all have these opportunities, and it must be fun for you to look back on it all and to look at all the books that you've written and all the things that you've done, so that when that day comes, you can do it without having any regrets. Do you feel that?
Well, yes, because when I had cancer. Now it's 14 years ago, and I was facing it, and I had to add things up then and say, okay, what have you done? Are you ready? What have you accomplished? And I felt satisfied then that even though I don't know, I just said to my radiologist, I guess it was, well, do I have time to write another book? And he said, well, it turns out I did. It was a rather miraculous thing. My cancer went away. My surgeon said there was no medical explanation.
It's because it wasn't your time, young man. You had more to do.
Yeah.
And that is an important aspect of it.
Yes. One of the things I've done in my life is I took up horseback riding when I was 45 years old.
Good for you.
And I fell in love with my horse, and with riding. And my partner said, "Well, at least it's not a sophomore."
Well, the fun thing about horses are, if you have never ridden a horse, and some of our audience has never been around them, they're a very intelligent animal.
I agree. I think they're very bright. We all have our limitations. So the horses are very intelligent in the contexts of their power and the places where they're powerful and with what they're concerned about. Right? A horse probably knows everywhere on its ranch where she can go and open a can and find carrots in it. And they always know the way home. Doesn't matter. They know the shortest way home. But they're hard. They're stubborn and flighty and powerful. And my horse was very difficult, and it really took me 10 years to get her to break down and finally totally accept me and love me. And now when that happened, oh man, what a wonderful thing, that this huge creature who could run up to you and stop on a dime and give you
hi, how are you?
So, and that taught me a lot about discipline too. Although I'm very disciplined, obviously, and not so structured. I could probably write any time. So
I wanted to ask you, Chuck, because everybody has got a different, not everybody, but some have the same process, but a lot of people have got a different process for putting it together. Some do an extensive outline and some do extensive character development. I know your books are historical novels by their nature in some of them. And so you have to do a lot of research about
Correct.
The actual human beings that you're writing about from 200 years ago and stuff. So what is it for you? Is it developing the outline, or is it finding out about the interesting characters that you're going to write about and then developing stories around that? How does it work for you?
I do not make an outline. I have a general idea where I want to go. I start with the characters, and if I've got great characters in this book, you have not only Beatrice, but Mary Shelley, Percy Bysshe Shelley, John Keats, Lord Byron, and even Coleridge. So the characters will take you there. So don't get in their way. Don't get in their way with your ideas, or just let it happen. Have the confidence to let them take over. And so the research is hard. Can be hard. It's exciting at first when you're discovering all these things and you're building tools. But I pretty much go at it day to day, and so when I'm in the mountains, Beatrice is in the mountains with Keats. Okay, where are they going to go? and they do go. They visit a convent, a ruined convent, right, and encounter real ghosts there, the two of them, and they also go to Loch Ness. But that just came to me. I said, well, I'm in Scotland. We're Scotland.
Loch Ness, yeah.
So where Keats had been before, and he got sick and had to go home, had to leave. But this time he came back and got to Loch Ness with Beatrice. But that adventure ends at Loch Ness.
Does it ever surprise you when you've got this ideas all set up and then but the two of them are in the forest, or they're on a hill, or wherever they are. Do you ever get surprised by where they go and what they do?
Yes, but since I'm doing it, it's kind of coming from me, so I feel that kind of authorial connection. I think one of the things I felt about this book, I really felt the power of this narrator was really in control and could do all these things that go on in this book. But I had a quote from Robert Frost when I was writing this book, and one of the things that Robert Frost says, he never started a poem that he knew how it was going to end. That's
pretty powerful, right?
That's pretty remarkable, right? And he wrote some wonderful stuff. Oh my gosh, Fire and Ice, and
there is a song that I use that's called Fire and Ice that I've helped him produce. So yeah, it's amazing to me, because I don't have this skill like you've got this skill. You can take something from and kind of snatch it out of the air, and voila, it gets to be put down on paper. I don't have that skill, but I have other stuff. But it's amazing. It must be amazing. Do you ever sit down and you write something and then you kind of forget a little bit about it, and then you go back and read it and go, by God, that's good?
Well, I do that a lot right now. I have a room where I have most of my books lined up in front of me, and I pick them up and look at them and say, I was pretty good. This wasn't bad at all. This was good. This was good writing, and that's satisfying. I don't know if I write. I tend to not write things down at night. The opposite of my partner, who writes things down all the time. But poetry is very different. But I have confidence that I'll remember. I have confidence that if this is important, it's going to come back to me. And generally, when I do write things down, I kind of look at it just in a moment, in a spontaneous moment, like you said, when you're making spaghetti and you get an idea and you write things down, and I come back to that. Nah, I don't use it.
Well, I was talking because I talk to writers all the time, and some of them will say, I get this urge, this moment in time at 3:00 in the morning, and I have to wake up, and I have a little pad of paper right next to the bed, and I have to write it down or I'm going to forget it. But then it's really important that, because it comes, I believe that we get messages from the other side, from our guides, from other folks in the middle of the night. And sometimes it's really important to write these things down so that you can remember them, or some semblance of them. And unless you've got a really good memory, can you remember some of the things that you think about at 3:00 in the morning?
Yes.
See, that's a good skill to have, right there.
But I don't write. But I don't write them down. I said I have confidence that if it's important, it's going to come back to me. But the unconscious is very close, and for years, not so much with this book, I did a lot more thinking, but I would write first thing in the morning because I wanted to be as close to my unconscious as possible. So that's in step with what you're talking about, encountering other realms, and it coming from there. It's the unconscious is a really important thing to pay attention to. Those dreams and motivations and contradictions and images. And I know a lot of writers that do exactly what you're saying, but they wake up and write it down. And again, I live with somebody who always says, shut up for a minute, I got to write something down. And okay, but
that's when you know that you are in cahoots with your life partner, when they feel comfortable enough to say, Chuck, would you just be quiet for a second? I've got to write this down before I lose my train of thought.
Well, I really respect her and respect her work, and that's an important thing too. In fact, we kind of discovered each other at that in Utah, in Salt Lake City, and I knew her vaguely, and I got a phone call late at night. I was actually up working, and she recited a poem to me with a party noise behind her about a tiny cow with only 3 legs, And she did it right from scratch, recited the whole thing, which poets can do. I know poets that can recite, she can recite Shakespeare at the drop. But that was the moment where I said, wow, this is somebody I want to talk to more. And 4 years later, we were married. But
well, congratulations. So
yeah.
she can read Shakespeare now, and she can remember some of it, because I did a play, Taming of the Shrew, when I was a kid, like 40 years ago. I learned the entire play line by line, and Shakespeare is difficult to learn versus contemporary. But now I can't remember any of it. It's all gone. So
yeah, but you do. I memorized a lot of Kubla Khan for this, just because I wanted to have it in me. Now I could probably only do the first 4 lines, but there are people that can recite it all. I know I've gone to walk with poets. It's Keats took a 2-hour walk with Coleridge once, and they walked back to his house in Hampstead, and he said it changed his life. Talking to Coleridge for 2 hours changed his life.
Isn't it amazing how the impact of one human being on another can be so profound? I think it's just wonderful, and I hope that if you take anything from this conversation, is that when you're having a conversation with somebody that is really in depth, and you're having a great talk with somebody, take what they're saying to heart, because a lot of times it means something really special. By the way, we're talking with Chuck Rosenthal, the acclaimed author. He's got 15 novels that are out there. The current one, Awake Forever in Sweet Unrest. Pick it up. It's out since September. And you can go to Amazon and everywhere else that books are sold. And you can also go to his website, which is chuckrosenthal.com. We need to take our last break, and it's just going to be real quick. And we will be right back after this. And we're going to have our last conversation with Mr. Rosenthal. We'll be right back.
Last week, Brandon met a girl on a dating app. One day after work, he finally found the courage to ask her out. No answer. He started to panic. Was he being too pushy? Maybe it was too...
Hey, sorry I didn't respond. I was driving. I would love to go on a date. How does tonight sound?
Brandon tried to play it cool, but inside he knew. A girl so smart, so responsible. She must be a keeper.
I get to chuckle, Chuck, every time I play that commercial, because that's never happened to me, not once. Has it ever happened to you where you just text somebody and they say, "Oh, I'd love to go on a date with you"?
No, I don't think so. It's taken out. But I'm not such a dater. I kind of get acquainted with someone before I would take them out, or just meet them somewhere. I was pretty notorious briefly in my life, but I got better. And one of them, so I was going to we were talking about ideas and changing people, but the other thing is being able to laugh with them and enjoy each other that much, and friends are with them. That's an important thing too, is that ability to laugh at yourself and look at life, and because there's plenty out there that that's not laughable. But
if you can't laugh at yourself and all the little goofy stuff that we all do and we all think about. I mean, when you think about it, it gets to be pretty funny after a while.
Yeah.
Because we all do.
Disaster is going to be funny, yes.
You just hope that the disaster that befalls you isn't that big of a deal.
Well, that it doesn't destroy you, but I guess you could go down laughing. I guess, but I don't know. I've always managed to escape. So then you look back and you say, that was really a funny circumstance. But there's a lot of pain, I know, in life as well. And
from my perspective, if you think about it from the standpoint of this is all part of the process of learning, and the experiences that we have. Some of them are going to be good, some of them are not going to be good, but you're going to have the opportunity to learn through them so that you can get to the next level of who it is that you truly want to be. I think that's kind of a good thing if you look at it that way.
Well, keep learning right up to the end.
That's right, because in your case, you're going to be writing and you're going to be just finishing your last novel, and then voila, that's it. And by the way, have you got another book in mind yet?
I have started another book. I had one. I was going to go back to my childhood, and I had some pretty disastrous thing happened to me when I was 13, and try to write about what before that, because I've already written a memoir about what happened, and I stopped. It wasn't after 50 pages. I stopped. I wasn't enjoying it. I didn't think it was going anywhere. So I started researching George Sand, who wrote 80 novels, and was the lover of Chopin for 9 years and of Flaubert for 8 years, and many, many other men. So I got fascinated with her, but I haven't really turned the corner on that. I haven't got the angle. I haven't got the story. That was the thing with Awake Forever is when I got Beatrice and the ghosts in the basement. That was it. I knew where I was going to go. So I'm kind of waiting for things to come together. So I'm not writing anything else, but this is the first time I really got behind a book, and it's kept me pretty busy. So I'm kind of letting myself, instead of just starting a book and seeing what happens.
So are you doing a lot of podcasts, are you?
Yes.
And so I got to ask you,
and people are smart, and it's interesting to encounter people, and people have different ideas, about what you've done. And as Mary Shelley says, the last person you want to ask is the author. So you've done a lot of podcasts. How do we stack up? Do we do okay? Oh, this was fun. This is fun, and you're lively and intelligent and active, and it's
boy, Chuck, I got to tell you, those are 3 adjectives that my ex-wife never would have used in my entire married life. So that's good. I feel good about that.
Yeah. Well, accept the compliment. It's true.
I accept, and thank you so much for that. What's interesting about being an author? To me, it's like being a musician. It's like when Paul McCartney wrote wrote Yesterday. That came to him in a dream, and he just woke up and he had the song in his head. No idea where it came from. He just had it in his head. So he went and asked John, have you heard this before? No. And he asked the producers, have you heard this? No. So eventually he took it as his own. And he still to this day doesn't know where it came from. Have you ever had that exact thing? Not exact thing, but in writing.
Yes.
Has anything ever come to you like that?
Yes.
Isn't that amazing when it does?
Yeah. I have another brother who is a musician. So he's, he, of course, he just, lived with the guitar in his hands every moment. And I have a daughter who lives in Australia. She's and she's a performer and also a musician, but she doesn't believe she isn't a true musician because she doesn't live with her instrument. The people she hires that are musicians, and that's when things come to you, when you live in them and with them and constantly, and then the magic happens. And certainly for McCartney, I did watch that 6-hour Beatle documentary, and I always thought Lennon was the whole game. McCartney's a really important guy.
Yeah, wasn't it amazing? If you haven't seen that Peter Jackson put it together, and it's about the filming of Let It Be and stuff. If just to watch their process of taking a song from a couple of notes or a phrase or something, and then turning it into a full-blown song that is really important and that people would look. That is a gift. Just like writing the books that you have written, to be able to do that and to have people say, as an example, I'm going to read this book once a year for the rest of my life. You know how few times that actually happens to people?
Yes, sure.
And so
That's
congratulations.
yeah, and it's part of it is the joy. You know, one of the things watching McCartney and Lennon together, the joy they felt at times working together, particularly that concert on the roof. I mean, that's the joy.
Yeah.
That's
And that isn't that the essence that we are all trying. We're all here and we're slogging through our life and our experiences and our good things and our bad things, but those pure moments of joy where everything has come together, isn't that what we're all striving
yes, but you have to earn them too. You have to
Yes,
earn them.
no question.
Yeah.
They spent years when they were in Hamburg, they would spend, 6 nights a week, 8 hours a night playing on stage. That's where they learned their craft. So they were an overnight success who had been doing it for 10 years. And so that's the work that has to be done, isn't it?
Yes, but you've got to have the talent and the drive to turn it over, to do it, to make it into something. So
Yes, indeed. Now I got it. We're going to run out of time here, and but Chuck, I got to ask you. By the way, we're talking with Chuck Rosenthal. Go to his website, chuckrosenthal.com, and get the book, Awake Forever in a Sweet Unrest. It is his newest novel, came out in September, and it's doing very well, and it's got some wonderful reviews. So do that. But I got to ask you, because you have been around a little while, and so I would love for you to give our audience just a nugget or two of some of the things you've learned in life that can benefit somebody who might be a little younger or less aware than you.
Pursue your dream. Don't let somebody, and have the discipline to do it. And that, I think, is just essential. Don't let somebody tell you, you can't do that. People told me that about writing. I shouldn't go to a writing school, or I shouldn't, write because it's impossible to be successful. Well, pursue it.
Surprise!
Yeah.
You have turned out to be highly successful. You're an acclaimed writer, and you've got a bunch of work out there, and your legacy is that you're not going away, and your works are not going away. And you know what? In 200 years, somebody's going to look back at one of your books, and they're going to imagine what it would be like if you were up walking around based upon some of your works. And so they may create a book similar to what you did for guys that were 200 years ago.
Well, I hope they come see me. we can go surfing.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Again, and Chuck, I want to thank you for being here. I've had a really nice time interviewing you.
I want to thank you for having me, and I've had a good time too, a really relaxing time, and that's great.
It's just a simple conversation. So it's been great fun. And again, go to chuckrosenthal.com. Get the book, Awake Forever in a Sweet Unrest. It's a great read, and I know that you'll enjoy it, especially if you are aware of the legends of the past, the literary legends of the past. This is kind of like a who's who, and it'll be great fun for you. So, Chuck, again, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for listening to this episode of Positive Talk with Kevin McDonald. Our purpose is to provide everyone with a positive, entertaining, and educational experience. I would love your feedback and comments about the show, including possible topics and great guest suggestions. Please email me at kevin@kmmedia.pro. And remember, be kind to one another, because each other's all we've got. That's Kevin